Okay, what are you doing now? What are you doing? Yeah. Are you chuffed?
I'm chuffed.
Are you chuffed with your tongue?
I'm chuffed with my tongue.
With your forked tongue. Okay. Talking of which, let's go to Gillian. I'll give you one guess what she's going to be talking about.
Well, yeah, a little bit of a clue there. But welcome back to South Stack on Anglesey Island. We've been talking about sea cliffs and seabirds, but there is one charismatic corvid. Chris and Michaela gave it away a bit there. That is very much at home in this coastal habitat, and that, of course, are choughs. They're brilliant birds, absolutely striking birds, a member of the crow family, the only one with a red bill and red legs, so you really can't miss them. But if you do, you usually do hear them as well. Before you see them, they tend to announce their arrival with this characteristic chiao call. Now they hug the coast, they stay close to the coast because they nest in crevices and in cracks on rocky ledges and on the cliffs here. And once they've found a good nesting site and bred successfully, they'll start to return to that same nesting site year on year. So they're very faithful to the nest sites that they establish and will return to the same area over time. So they're doing really, really well here. Now, the last counted, there are 13 nest sites at South Stack, and this year there are 12 of them that are active. So they're doing well, not just because of the nest site, but because of habitat as well. There's good foraging ground in this area as well. Now, they need a mosaic of patchy bracken and gorse and patches of open grassy areas, which they'll use to probe, and they'll use those long bills to probe into the ground. You can see this one here looking for a suitable, softer area, and it'll probe into the ground looking for things like leather jackets, so insect larvae, beetle larvae, and they'll pull those out with those bills. So just to give you an idea, because they have very particular requirements, what they need is these open patches of grass need to be a certain type of length. So what they'll need is something from about 5 centimeters to anything about 10 centimeters, anything more than that, and they start to find it difficult to get into that bed, then to the ground underneath there. And that open grassy areas tends to be kept open by grazing livestock. So it's partly to do with how these land and coastal areas are managed. Now, of course, they don't read the field notes, so there's a little bit of variation around the length of the grass. But like I said, because of all of this, they do really well. And they know they're doing well here because the choughs are doing well, they're long-lived. Typically, choughs will live to around 7 years, but the oldest chough that's been recorded here is a female that made it to 22 years, a female called Mrs Mousetrap, and she has quite the story. Her story begins back in 2006 when she met a male, Mr Mousetrap. So Mrs and Mr Mousetrap set up shop and they started to breed and they mated very successfully. Mr Mousetrap was her half-brother from another father, but we're not going to get into that. They did well. They raised choughs, fledglings, you can see there, year on year until 2021 when Mrs Mousetrap disappeared, presumed dead. Mr Mousetrap was left all on his own, but not for long. He stayed on his own just for a few months until he met a new bird, a new Mrs Mousetrap. And last summer they nested, they bred successfully, and they've done it again this year. And news is that their chicks have fledged just last week. And all of this is because there's some fantastic ringing work. So Mr Mousetrap is still around. We see him around here. He's very vocal, foraging, but you can see those colour rings there on his legs. And that is part of a project called Cross and Stratford Welsh Chough Project. It's been running for about 30 years. It's a brilliant colour ringing project that allows the team to monitor the individuals, to identify the individuals and see where they range, how far they travel, who they mate with, and of course, you know, these sort of soap opera dramas that seem to unfold with Mr and Mrs Mousetrap. And he has become quite the character here. The visitors do enjoy seeing him. Like I said, he's very bold and he does seem to be out and about quite frequently. And of course, Mrs Mousetrap, the new Mrs Mousetrap, I should say, is also getting to become very familiar with this area. And all of this down to that colouring and work. Megs, who would have thought that this kind of drama, these soap operas, unfold in the world of the chough?
It's amazing.